What do you think? They're like right on the edge out?
Yeah.
Maybe one more minute. It's an exciting moment. Perhaps if you were watching us most recently, you had seen that we had removed the other oven that was here, and now we have a larger oven in place, and it's the same one that we have in our Mesa bakery, except it has an updated control panel. It's a few years newer, so now we get a touchscreen control panel. We're finishing off the bake on cookies right now. They just need a touch longer. We don't have any of our recipes programmed in here at the moment, and so we're kind of in this phase where we can port over everything that we have in Mesa, which we intended on doing, but we also have a team that's brand new to this oven, and so we're intentionally working in manual mode first. The programs, you push start and then the oven will automatically run through all of the various baking cycles, whether it be inject steam or lower the fan speed or do whatever other adjustments to the bake. You can actually, these are now ready to pull. The benefit of baking on manual is it's just giving everybody a lot more practice with the various products, to the point that people start to understand sort of once again the baking rhythm of the pastries. Our rack ovens are kind of incredible in the sense that they do change settings on their own throughout the bake, and so on the deck oven you get a little bit more of an intuitive sense for your bake because you have to release steam. It's an analog thing that you pull out. You have a little bit of an easier time of being with the bake the whole time. But with the pastry oven, it's so, automated to the point that, it will drop temperature for you, it will release steam, it will add steam back in, and you can, I actually forgot the golden rule of this oven. It's funny, we have the same thing in Mesa. These ovens are designed with this green button, and if you don't push the green button, the oven starts yelling at you. It won't do anything until you push the green button after every action. I don't actually know the design function. I think it must be a safety deal. Obviously you're opening up a giant door that you can just walk into that is a hot box, so maybe this is just to prevent catastrophe that the people building the oven have foreseen. We just have to remember to always push the green button. And so anyway, one of our first cookie bakes on this new oven. This is just day 2, and for our chocolate chip cookies, we're looking for a golden brown around the rim and a slightly lighter center. I think that we're right on the edge of the perfect bake right now, and we have to decide. But the thing that I'm wondering, Nick, is are you guys writing down your bakes?
Not yet.
Okay, so I'll ask you to add that. Now, since we're doing everything on manual, write down the timings of everything so that your work each day doing these adjustments, 1 minute more, 1 minute less, then lends itself to we can just plug in a program and you don't have to worry about it. It's still a lot more stress-free when you can do something else and just let the oven do its thing. Based on where they are today, I think we will probably get a decent result. I think one thing that we have going for us, especially with this oven, is there is no downside to doing a test bake. I'm not worried about things like Danishes at all. We can fire those fully.
Okay.
Not worried about where rosemary will turn out today. You might only bake 1 tray of everything else and see how it goes. So we're starting a little warmer for the croissants, and then I'll immediately adjust the temperature down when I load the pastry in. 15 seconds of steam will be what I inject right at the beginning of the croissant bake. That seems like a lot. Actually, on a deck oven, that would be a ton of steam. But on a rack oven like this, it's a pretty large chamber that you have to fill. And I believe 15 seconds of steam is roughly 1.5 to 2 liters of water, which if you consider the full chamber here, that's not that much water vapor to inject. It's just the right amount. We're going to fire off the danishes, so that's the blank danishes in their with their ramekins on top. The ramekins leave a depression that we can then use to fill with lemon curd. We will test one tray of croissants. We'll also test one tray of the pain au chocolat and one of the morning buns. I think I'm actually going to pull 2 morning buns. They're a little bit more popular, and in case we delay the rest of the bake, this will put us in safer territory to start the day. So with this new oven in place, we are trying to make our future a little bit better. We were reaching points with the previous oven, which, mind you, is a large oven. We could bake 16 trays of product at a time. This particular oven can bake 40 trays at a time, and we're still, of course, baking the same amount that we were a few weeks ago here, but not for long. Later this year, we're going to be opening just a storefront in downtown Phoenix. It's not very far away from this location, just a short 15-minute drive. And likely this location will be doing a lot of the baking for that one, as we won't have any ovens there. So I have, my top heat's pretty high at the moment. It's a little hotter than I even want it to be. Oops, I forgot the green button again. So now I'll hit start. Now my steam is releasing. You can hear it. Actually, a bunch of stuff seemed to kind of gear up all at once. I'm immediately going to drop this down to 375. And that's the steam release that you just saw coming into the room. We don't see any steam under the oven, which is a good sign. It means that we have the right amount of water pressure coming into the oven. If you have too much water pressure, then more water will come through than was intended, and the water can actually have a spilling effect out of the oven. We're not having that problem. It means that the installation went well. You know, we're talking about the bake here, but installing this oven in this spot was not fun. We're still wrapping up the work. So we have to finish out this wall. This was the backing for the previous oven. Now it's going to have the FRP finish, which will make the whole kitchen area here look pretty consistent. This oven arrived in parts, and to be honest, it's okay. So I actually had to kind of restart this bake because in configuring the manual timer, I didn't the first time, and I had put it down for 1 minute instead of what I intended, which was more like 18 minutes. So no biggie. The screen actually told me to open and close the door. Not sure why. That forced me to put more steam in the oven, but we're all good now. Back to where we want to be. Building this thing was a bear. I'll have to admit that receiving new ovens is probably my least favorite thing. They arrive on parts. They're very fragile when they arrive. They take up a ton of space when they're not in their final form factor. In fact, we didn't have anywhere to place this oven upon arrival, and because of the way that it arrived, we had to unpack it directly from the crates right away. We couldn't take it safely off the truck on the crate, which was something like 10 feet long, so we manually unpacked it. We had to actually fill up one of our delivery trucks fully with the oven for a couple weeks and rent another truck during that couple weeks in order to accommodate the building of the oven. And always kind of worried about, you know, anything that might happen in that construction process, especially because you've already paid for the oven. So I'm very happy that it's installed and working and we're past that stage. I would prefer not to have to build an oven very often, to be honest. So welcome back to the mill and mix room. Got a scald going, and under the water boiler is getting ready. We're preparing rye pans. We're scaling out olives and we're scaling out dough, getting the day started. Not very long ago, there was a cutout here of the bare concrete wall, and now we have a new roll-up door. It's still kind of in progress. That's why it's blockaded still. We are installing an air curtain on the other side, but you can now see the outdoors. We still have a lot of work to do, so this is kind of a progress update, if you will. The ground is not passable, at least not for our purposes. Of course, like, I could bring this rolly bin across the threshold and be fine, but if we were to bring what this door is actually for through here, we wouldn't actually make it through. The reason that we needed this door in place is for the mill. As we mill more flour, as we share it with the world, which, by the way, you can go order some flour on our website, proofmill.com. It's just proof mill, singular. Avoided the double F situation, the triple F actually, because proof flour mill, no, double F. It gives you a weird double F in the first word. So we just did proofmill.com. You can go on there. We still have some flour available from this last pilot, although we've been sharing flour with a lot of people, and the point of this door is to give us the ability to switch out this 1-ton container of grain a lot easier. So we can go around this alley to the warehouse from the other side without interfering with basically everything else that's going on in the building. In the past, up until now actually, whenever we need to switch that container, we have to bring the new container down this hallway, and there's a dish pit in the way, and there's lockers in the way, and there's a lot of people in the way, there's speed racks in the way. So basically the entire warehouse has to get cleared out in order to swap this container. And what we're trying to get to as a flour mill is to be able to operate out of these containers for all the grains that we're milling. So whether it be white Sonora, or whether it be buckwheat, or whether it be Coruscant, whether it be the Rouge de Bordeaux, we can basically receive a whole sack of grains as opposed to receiving grains in 50-pound bags. For us, that means we are not paying the labor on somebody filling up bags to 50-pound increments, which is an added cost, and we just end up dumping them in bulk in the mill anyway. So, but that trade-off comes with a lot of investment. We have to invest in these containers, and moreover, we have to invest in kind of a way of feeding the mill that's efficient. But we believe that the flour mill is just really getting going. Let's get back to the new pastry oven. So the pastries are coming along quite nicely. I don't really have many complaints about any of this test bake. I do think that we could push the plain croissants and the almonds just ever so slightly more, which is why I held back some of the bake. I think the pain au chocolat also will benefit in size from a little bit more, and I'm trying to impart that wisdom onto newer teammates here, especially new to this oven, given that we're just baking for ourselves today, and given that we have a long day ahead of us, and now that our oven can really do a lot in a short amount of time, we don't have to rush the bake. With sourdough, the actual finish matters greatly, meaning if I put the rest of the pastries back in the proofer and let them hang out for an hour or two, you will notice substantially the volume difference in the final product. Interestingly, to the customer's eye, in many cases, that can be the difference in value perception. Though it's the same amount of dough, we made the same amount of dough, same volume, but not everybody understands that rising part the same. And we do on occasion have people that ask something like, did you make your products smaller and are you charging the same amount for them? On a day where maybe they don't come out quite as large. But actually it's all about judgment calls here before the bake. And probably one of the most important parts of baking is, in sourdough in particular, is the judgment of, is this product fully fermented and ready to bake? In yeasted baking, there's so much power in that yeast, even in the sort of final explosion that happens when the product gets heat in the oven, that power compensates for this judgment. And so what I would say is that to a sourdough baker, this part is pure skill and has nothing to do with how well you can top the pastry or your technical ability in laminating, and everything to do with whether you know the right time to start this part of the process. I think it's one of the hardest things to train in as well, because you're asking people to look at immeasurably little details, and for me it's easy to sort of take for granted because I've now seen these same pastries for years and years and years, and I've seen them in different contexts. I've seen them in the garage, I've seen them in circumstances where they proofed poorly or proofed well or overproofed or underproofed. I've seen all the various shapes and sizes and final results, the full range, and so for me, it's very glaringly obvious where they are. To someone that's been looking at them for a month or two, that's a very different world. They're not seeing the same nuance because they don't have the same frame of reference of hundreds and hundreds of bakes. So in sourdough, this matters a lot. And I think one thing that we don't necessarily talk about a lot is that we teach this here at Proof, and it's part of the thing that makes us as a sourdough bakery a bit unique, is teaching our bakers to judge, which for the history of baking has always been a really important part of the process. But increasingly, industrial baking goes towards just hitting buttons and keeping an automated process going. Yes, we have beautiful tools like this new oven, which help us grow and speed the process and have higher quality bakes, and even program in all the various intervals of the baking so that we don't have to do quite as much active management. But nothing takes away the actual skill of judging when to actually do each part of the process. And that is what baking is all about. The actual working with nature, working with the natural fermentation cycle, and teasing out the most that you possibly can aiming for that extra 5% or 10% improvement when you wait 30 minutes or you push the bake another 2, or you take it out now rather than wait another minute. That's what baking's all about. Bake still needs a few more minutes, but this is a good time to pull those danishes out and fill them with lemon curd. The coloring has started on the top of the pastries. I would even say that we could have pulled the danishes a minute or 2 sooner without worry. You don't want to pull them early in this sort of par-baked form, because if the crust hasn't developed at all, they will collapse down on themselves. Any of the pastries will. I learned that the hard way in the garage on the old oven that used to be in this room when our power cut out on a Friday evening as we were baking for market in the middle of the pastry bake. Go. So I can just reach out This last part of the bake is all about crust development. So what I need to do is make sure to open the damper. We'll keep this at 350. We'll set a 4-minute timer for now. We want no steam. And we'll start. Hit the button. And now this is going to open. So you see the valve symbol here is closed. The valve symbol here is open. By opening the damper, what I'm doing is releasing any moisture that's in the chamber. It basically is opening the vents to the chamber. And that means that if there's still steam trapped in the chamber or any moisture coming off the products, that'll be released, and so you have a dry oven. You need a dry oven in order to develop the brown crust at the end. So mostly for crust development, and just a few more minutes essentially for the rest of this bake. What we'll do is now fill these with lemon curd, and when they're full, they'll go in the oven now for a few more minutes to set the curd and finish off the bake of the danishes. And you know that this one is just like an indicator. You don't actually use this knob.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of a weird thing about this oven. You'd think that a knob, like, you could turn it.
Right.
It's not meant for turning. What's also kind of interesting, which you might not have realized, is that this damper is related to this timer, and so it's on its way shut. I don't know if you can tell, like, it's actually moving. It's like slowly shutting.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. It's new to this oven. Like, even the Mesa oven doesn't do this, where you can set the amount of time that the damper will stay open and then close. I don't know if it's actually helpful, because normally we're doing the other way around, where we have the damper closed and we're opening it.
Right.
I don't actually want to close it when I've opened it, but apparently somebody somewhere does.
Yeah.
So what's kind of cool in this oven too is that we've seen a significant improvement in the final appearance of the pastry. And it goes to show that the quality of your oven does matter. It does have a factor. It isn't the barrier to making good products, because I think our pastries were quite good 2 weeks ago on the previous oven. But you can tell in the finish, you can see in the crust, you can see more texture in the final crust, a little bit more bubbly, flaky layers, and that does have to do with how the oven conducts steam, conducts heat. All of that sort of matters, and this particular oven, this particular manufacturer, has a long history of design in baking, about 100 years, whereas a lot of the oven manufacturers out there are reproductions of those design factories. So in this case, you have kind of a source design place that builds ovens and is passionate about heat conductivity. And in other cases, you have kind of a value product that's a copycat, if you will. It's not that one's wrong or the other's right, it's just that it is nice to work with equipment that was thoughtfully designed for baking, even if I don't always understand all of the various functions like the damper opening on the timer. Maybe one day I'll get it. All right, this timer's about to go off. We're just dropping the rack and I can pull out these pastries. See if you notice a difference in the next bake versus this one. It'll be small, but I'm not upset with this bake by any means, but I do think that there is still a little bit more to be had in overall size. So the lemon curd will set when the curd itself reaches 160 degrees. The pastry is already fully baked, but can benefit from a little bit more crust. Green button gets me every time. I'll open up the damper. So I asked for these to be put back in the proofer, and I'm still very happy with that overall decision. I think there's more to be had from their final proof, and I think that our new team member in the front will get to see that firsthand in the comparison. Not that there's anything wrong with the bake that we just did. I think the pastries are beautiful, but the ones that I left behind will be slightly larger and just slightly more perfect, by getting this extra time. But 20 minutes doesn't really matter much in sourdough baking. I've asked for an extra hour and a half. It's significant, and that's something to note, that you can egg wash and then put back. You can keep this process extending in sourdough baking, and sometimes you really can benefit from it. Hopefully we'll see that today. If it reaches like 170, it bubbles, and it doesn't look as nice. So like this is fine. It will definitely set. If it's above 160, you can pull it.
Awesome.
It's easiest to score your loaves when they're cold. We eat with our eyes first.
You have to understand your audience enough to be able to say, like, I'm going to be charging a lot of money for my super crazy cool thing, or it's so cool and so creative that only you can do it, and then you don't stand a chance of scaling it.
Let's go over what it's like to build a bakery from one person to many.